This is We Are Pulse by Misha Sanders. The hashtag says we are pulse, and some of us feel our life force in the beating of our own pulse, and our straight privilege or our white privilege, and we say, not exactly, but we are with pulse, so let's hashtag that too. We are pulse, and we are with pulse, and we have pulse, and together we rise. Beloved queer siblings who said we are pulse, or we are with pulse, or we have pulse, but the banks will not take our blood, though our hearts cry to help. We are pulse, we are pulse. Beloved Muslim siblings who said we are pulse, or we are with pulse, or we have pulse, and we wait with you in long, hot lines to give our own blood, without breaking our fast of Ramadan, no matter how tired, our pulse, our pulse. Beloved Latinx siblings who said, we are pulse, or we are with pulse, or we have pulse, and fear will never, ever cause us to cease our dancing to our rhythms, our beats, the pulse, the pulse. Beloved Black siblings who said, we are pulse, or we are with pulse, or we have pulse. And today, on behalf of Mother Emmanuel and her children, we rise with you and say, enough, enough, and we pulse, we pulse. We pulse together today for all the fallen beloved believers in life and love and laughter, who just wanted to dance until dawn, or until the blood pulsed endorphin energy through their beautiful brown bodies, until they had had their fill. It is not enough that we rise. We do not want to rise because so many who belong with us are gone. Yet rise we have and rise we will because we remain. And we see the pulse in each other, and our hearts pulse hope, and hope is everything. Just as long as we have pulse, we are with pulse. We are pulse. June 12th, 2016 was supposed to be a joyfully bittersweet day for me. We were celebrating the end of my internship at my teaching congregation, celebrating the things and ways we had all learned and grown in our time together. I don't remember when I first read the news about the Pulse shootings that morning, but it was before I had made the trek there. At first, it was a shooting at a nightclub, the kind we've gotten somewhat used to hearing about living in America. Stories began emerging about the terror of the people who were able to escape, of the people inside making final calls to loved ones. Some of them hid in restrooms. Those who could fled for their lives. Stories then began emerging that it was a gay bar, and there were many Latin folks who were there that night. The numbers of dead rising. Eventually, the news broke that it was Latin night at the bar. Two well-known Latin trans and drag performers were featured on the stage that night. Watching my Facebook feed and my white queer friends saying, this is us, when will it end? And browner queer friends later, this club was targeted on this night, not only to kill as many people as possible, but to kill brown queer folks specifically. The complexities were so real. This has been the experience of queer people for generations, and the LGBTQIA+ community is not immune from racism. It was the first time I really had a glimpse into what it might be like to have a loved one there, to feel panic and terror. My best friend is Latin, queer, and disabled. They could have been there that night. Then there were the names being released of those who had died. There was fear that some of them were being outed to family for the first time, and that some had been undocumented. It was at the time the deadliest mass shooting in modern US history and remains the single deadliest attack on the LGBTQIA community in US history. Our Muslim kin and neighbors suffered mightily through this too, and I want to name that. Though the murderer was Muslim, we know that this was an exception, even as our country is regularly primed to turn against Muslims in time of fear and violence. The lines of the queer folks, gay men especially, lining up to donate blood, knowing that for reasons no one can fathom anymore, reasons that emerged and were instituted during the AIDS epidemic due to homophobia and not science, they knew they'd be unable to. The echoes of that earlier time were present with them as they waited to be turned away, when the government chose condemnation instead of support, as they lay wasting away on beds for days. One family who had already turned away from them slammed their doors shut, even knowing it would be for the last time. Lesbian women showed up then, as they have always, despite pushback from gay men who wanted to be the only faces and voices at the front of the movement, and from other queer women and people who felt they were abandoning their own cause. But they showed up and worked tirelessly for their friends and beloveds, offering comfort and care to gay and bi men with HIV and AIDS. If you've ever wondered why the L most often begins LGBTQIA+, it's a nod to the lesbians who gave everything they could for their queer kin during those many years of crisis in their community. But the men had to show up in those lines in Orlando. It was their way of having some power, some community, some way to gather and mourn, as they had for generations on generations before. A daytime vigil for the dozens killed that night, made possible by the same ugly homophobia that killed thousands of people as the government mocked those who became infected with HIV and died. That was back before the LGBTQIA+ community felt more confident being in public, before the privileges bestowed by marriage equality and broader social acceptance. It has only been more recently that queer folks started to think that those private, underground communities that had sustained them for so long might no longer be necessary. That night in 2016 impacted me deeply, impacted my understanding of gay and queer culture and history in new ways, gave me more insight into the stories of so many people I love. For example, if you look at the pictures that are available of those who were killed, many of them are selfies. It was the first mass event where selfies were the best and most candid pictures available for victims. It was probably the first time that people were able to name and honor that, at least for some of them, selfies were when they could feel completely themselves. And I remember how beautiful they were. So many young people, so many of the pictures released were the best of them, taken when they were joyful and happy, coy or playful, full of life, proud and whole. The way they demanded the world see them exactly as they were, no more, no less. Their lives were pulsing in the nightclub that night as they danced and celebrated. People of different ages and relationships. A mother was there with her son. Siblings were there together. Partners and friends, of course, as well. Men, women, and people of other genders, gay, straight, bi, pan, or ace, mostly brown or black, or at least the dead were. On vacations, celebrating birthdays and other events, some showing their skills off as dancers. So much joy in that building, a safe place where they could all be free. It was a sanctuary from a harsh world where they were not fully accepted. Students, executives, hairstylists, dancers, medical professionals, people came from all different backgrounds. That's one of the reasons Pulse was so popular as a nightclub. It was an inclusive space where all were welcome. The LGBTQIA plus community and others have experienced many hardships in this state, increasingly over the last few years. There have been victories on rollbacks of rights, but that has made the state's actions more painful. The Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, was ordered to paint over the rainbow crosswalk next to the Pulse Memorial site last year, along with all others throughout the state. The rainbow sidewalk was originally installed by the state as a memorial tribute in 2017. The state has now also legislated against local governments supporting DEI efforts, and we are witnessing some local governments canceling their annual Pride Month proclamations. Perhaps they are hoping that we'll all just admit defeat and return to our closets. What they don't know is how spectacular those closets were and remain. They may try to erase us from the public, but they can never take the pride from our hearts. We will always find a way to celebrate and resist, as we always have. There has never been a time when queer people didn't exist, and there never will be. I have seen a lot more "why do we have Pride Month" and similar comments on social media, and I have to say I miss my bubble. There is so much hatred in the world, and my heart aches for those who are taught in their churches to hate their neighbors and to pass judgment on others. We at Tri-UU have been on the receiving end of this recently with regard to their upcoming showing of Gaza is Our Home. The Facebook post about it blew up, and there has been at least one public plea that has resulted in some calls and emails that have been hostile and just mean about it. Cindy, the board president there, asked me what we should do. I replied that I strongly believe in don't feed the trolls as a policy. For me, doing it is a bit akin to breaking the rules of caring for a mogwai, for those of us who remember graphics. We here are people who celebrate diversity and thought and love, quotes attributed to Francis W. be damned. I've said before that I believe our call is to learn to love people who think and love differently than we do. We can practice this by stretching ourselves to hear others' stories. I shared a quote in my last service from Krista Tippett from her book, Becoming Wise, an Inquiry into the Mystery and Art of Living. She writes, I can disagree with your opinion, it turns out, but I can't disagree with your experience. And once I have the sense of your experience, you and I are in relationship, acknowledging the complexity of each other's position, listening less guardedly. The difference in our opinions will probably remain intact, but it no longer defines what is possible between us. In this place, we want to learn from each other and others about their experiences because it honors all of our humanity to do so. It is a sacred task and the most important work we can do. We witness to each other in our struggles, our pains, our hurts, our celebrations, our joys, and our strengths. None of us can be free until we are all free. So long as barriers exist and are used to vilify and keep us from one another, we all remain trapped in a system that begs us to align with good or bad, whole or broken, better or less than, on and on. May we resist the binaries and take a page from Pride by celebrating the spectrums. We don't need the state to honor those who died and the many who still live and fight for their lives daily. We never have. This space is a sanctuary. May we make it a safe space for those on the margins, because then it can be a safe space for all of us. May we honor the lives lost and remember them by dancing fully and often and by being ourselves. May we try more pride and skip the prejudice. And may those of us who have the ability to do so continue to advocate for freedom and justice, that we may all be able to dance without fear ever again, because joy is a rebellion too. If you would please rise and lift your voice.